We're continuing to build our index page by inserting and styling content. And the second section of our page is the SMART Goals section. Real quick, I want to toggle over to our design mockup that we have that I've set up and scroll down and show you what we're trying to accomplish here. So if I scroll down here, you're going to see that in my secondary section of goals, I have a different background color than the previous section. So it's highlighting this section just slightly in a different way. And it's also a list style set of goals, so I know I'm going to insert a list there for my goals. So I'm going to toggle back over to Dreamweaver here, and we're going to begin styling this section. So I'm going to pop over into my CSS style sheet there, and I'm going to scroll down and locate my main content styles, and then keep scrolling down because I want to add a new section underneath main content styles. So I'm going to place my cursor after that last closing curly brace there after the content main, and it's on line 101 on my style sheet, and hit the enter return key a couple of times, and we're going to type in a comment. So / asterisk, and then I like to use 4 hyphens there. And what I'm going to call this is secondary content styles. So I know that this is not necessarily my main style here, but it's kind of a oops. It's my like a secondary section. So then I'm going to hit the enter return key, and I'm going to call this. We have to basically give it the same type of treatment as our content main, but the difference here is as you see up here in my where it says content main wrap top, I don't need to give it the same margin treatment because this content section doesn't go immediately below our fixed header section. So I'm going to start this off as a class because we might use this in other places. So I'm going to call this, start off with a period and call this content dash sec for secondary, and then wrap, and then open that up with a curly brace. So the same type of deal here. We give it a width of 100%, and then a margin. For the margin, I am going to space it just a little bit below the previous section, or the section that follows it above. So I'm going to do this as 30 pixels is what I've determined that I like. You may adjust that value if you'd like, and then auto for the right, 0 for the bottom, and then auto for the left, and in that statement with a semicolon, and then hit the enter return key. And I'm going to give this a background color, and the way I'm going to do this background color is slightly different than we've been doing with the hexadecimal value. We're going to use RGBA, which stands for red, green, blue, and the A stands for alpha, which allows us to adjust our opacity. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to stay in that same gray color that I've been using, but I want to drop it down in opacity so it drops it down a few shades. So to do that, what I'm going to start typing in, instead of the pound symbol for color, and actually a quick point here, if I type in the pound symbol, by default it selects the hex color wheel down here on the bottom. If I switch over to RGBA though, you'll notice that in the bottom here where it's grayed out, it'll start to make that that value. I already know the value of this. I'm going to try to find it by using my color picker. It's 215, and it's 215 for each one of those values. So I'm getting close there. There we go. And then I'm going to drop this down to 60%. So you notice there, as soon as I hit the enter return key, how this looks a little bit different than the hexadecimal value of using the pound sign. So instead of pound symbol or hashtag there, it starts off with RGBA, and then in parentheses it has the 3 different color values, the color numbers, all separated by commas, and then last is the opacity value, starting off with the decimal point, so it reduces the opacity of this. The full color with no opacity would be 1.0. So anything less than that, this is 60% of that value. So I'm going to be done with that line there. So I'm going to place my cursor at the end of that semicolon, hit the enter return key, and then right curly brace, close that out with a right curly brace, and then enter return key a couple more times. So I'm on line 110. And again, same kind of treatment as we've done with previous containers. I need to start this off with a class, so this is going to be period, content, SEC for secondary, and then contain. So I'm going to open up a curly brace, and then we're going to set the width to this to the 940 pixels that we're so used to. And then margin value is going to be 0, and then auto, so it centers within our page for us. And I am going to add a bit of padding here, and we're going to do padding 30 pixels top and bottom and 0. So we're going to have quite a bit of cushion there within our section. And I'm going to hit the enter return key and then a right curly brace. So this is as far as I'm going to go for just a minute. I want to put in some content, and then I want to go back and style that content. So I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick by Control S or Command S, and then pop back into my source code, and then scroll down here. And what I'm looking for is that closing div tag after the content main contain with my personal legend in there. So I'm on line 54 of my code. It might be different for yours. So I'm looking for that closing div tag right before that break class clear. And I'm just going to hit the enter return key and then type in a left caret, and we're going div class content secondary wrap, and then enter return key left caret /, and then I'm going to put my cursor in between that blank space that I left and tab over, and we need to put that container inside of it. So left caret div class and then content secondary content contain, right caret, and then enter return key left caret /. So then that will start my my div container there. Okay, so this is our section for SMART goals. I know there's a couple of things that I want to place in here. So I'm going to tab over real quick, and I'm going to start this off with a heading 1 tag. So left caret H1, right caret, and then left caret / to close that statement, or to close that tag. And then I'm going to put my character in between that. And then I created a title of set the bar high and go for it. You can create a different title for this if you'd like. Oops, having trouble typing here today. And then following that is a secondary title for the first set of goals. So I'm going to left caret H2 and then left caret /, and then I know I'm going to have 3 more of these. So I think what I'm going to do here is, to save a little bit of time, so I'm going to highlight this H2 and Control C Command C, and then paste that 2 more times. So I have 3 heading 2s to put in there. So the first one to go inside of there, I just placed my cursor in between that first opening and closing heading 2. The first one is the short term, and I kind of did a little bit of a funner titles for these. And the second one is called somewhere in the middle, so these would be your intermediate goals. And then the third one is down the road, so kind of your long term after high school goals. And I said down the road for the long haul. Okay, and then for each one of these you set 2 different goals for each one of these short terms. So probably be a good idea for you to open up your Word document, and I have some ipsum lorem text that I would like to place in there. So how I would do this, first of all, is I know I have 2 of these goals. So right after my short term H2, I'm going to hit the enter return key, and I'm going to use an ordered list for these goals, so a number appears beside each one instead of a bullet point. So OL, and then right caret, and then enter return a couple times, left caret forward slash, so I have a space there. Okay, and then with ordered list, with any kind of list, you end up using two different tags. You have the tag that wraps everything around it, and that sets up whether it's an ordered or an unordered list. And then you have list items that creates each bullet point or each list item in your list. So I need to type in the li tag, so left caret li, right caret, left caret forward slash. And so I have some text that needs to go inside of there. Rather than opening up my Word document with my ipsum lorem, I'm just going to scroll up to where I had my personal legend. Of course, you would want to open up your SMART goals document and then copy and paste each one of those goals in turn. So for me, though, I'm just going to highlight a sentence or two of my ipsum lorem text, and then Command C or Control C that, and then place that into my list, and then paste that in there. And I would do the same thing for my second goal on the short term. So left caret li, and then close that out, and then place my cursor in between those two tags, and then paste my next set of goals in there as well. So you would continue to do that for each one of your sets of goals, for your short term, your middle, and then your long term. What I'm going to do to shorten this tutorial up is I'm just going to highlight those two list items that I just typed in and copy them, and then underneath the middle term I'm going to paste that in there, and then for the long term paste that in there as well. So looks like I got a couple of tabbed in issues. Oh, I know what happened. Hold on. We need to Control Z that. You know what I forgot? I forgot to include the OL tags. Real easy to do. Don't forget OL tags there. So I probably should do this for you guys so you don't quite get so lost. So remember, left caret OL, right caret, and then left caret forward slash to close that out. And then find your last long-term goal there, left caret OL, and then enter return left caret forward slash. So then now I can go back into and place my cursor between those OL tags and then paste my goals in there. Okay, sorry for the confusion. It looks like I need to tab over that list item there. Remember, whenever we nest a div tag within each other, it's always a good idea to tab in so you can recognize that as being a nested item. Even with lists, it's kind of helpful to find those later on. Okay, so if we want to, let's take a look at this real quick and see what we need to work on here, because we're going to have some styling to do. So I'm going to click on my Preview in Firefox button down here and scroll down, and what you're going to see is a couple things. One is my bullets, my ordered list is very to the left. It's not indented like I would like it to be. And I think what I would also like to do is style some of my headings here. If you look at my mock-up, really haven't done much in terms of the H1. It's very similar, but the H2s are a little bit different, and you also notice that there's some spacing as well that I've created underneath each one of those. So let's go ahead and take care of that right now. Let's tab over to our Dreamweaver, and we're going to switch over to our style sheet, and right underneath where we have content secondary contain, the first one I'm going to address is our H1. So right after that closing curly brace, enter return key, and then period content dash sec dash contain H1, and then open up our curly brace and then enter return. I'm not going to do much in terms of this H1. The only thing I'm going to adjust is the font size. So, and I'm going to use 1.7 EM. You are welcome to use a pixel value if you'd like. You're also welcome to change the color and the look and all that kind of stuff. In fact, you can change and set up your text and your font however you would like, as long as it looks good, right? Enter return. And then the second one that I need to address is my H2. And you notice in the H1 I didn't give it any kind of margin value or anything, and that's mainly because I've already given the container itself some padding up at the top, so if I gave it any more margin it would make it even more spaced down. So I don't really need to do anything in terms of the H1's padding or margin values. And then the next one though I do, so period content, and then from my list here I'm just going to select content secondary contain so I don't mistype anything. That's kind of the nice thing about our code hint in Dreamweaver. And H2 this time, and then open up a curly brace and hit the enter return key. What I'm going to address here is the margin, and I'm only going to address the top margin, and then 0 to the right, 0 to the bottom, and then 0 to the left. So I'm only doing the top part of the margin. And then font size here is, I'm going to go ahead and do this as a little bit smaller font, 1.2 EM. It's not quite the same size as my body, like my paragraph font size or my list font size. It's just slightly bigger. And then I'm going to go ahead and give this a color, and I'm going to use believe it or not, I'm going to use the same color as I did in my header, the header background color. And this is going to work because if you remember right, in my background color I've reduced the opacity to about 60%, so it's a lighter gray, so this will appear as a darker gray, and it won't be overpowering in terms of a secondary heading color. The other thing I'm going to change is by default our font weights for H1s, H2s, and H3s are bold, and I want to take that away. I want to just go with a regular font weight, no bold. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to text transform this so it's uppercase. So I could just, type this as being uppercase. What's nice about the text transform piece is that if I forget to, it's just a little bit easier. I could actually type in everything as lowercase and then adjust that as uppercase, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. So that's that for the H2. I'm going to hit the enter return here and then close that out with a curly brace. The last two pieces that we need to address are the ordered list tag and the list tag, which is the li tag. So in this piece though, we target the content again, so content secondary contain, and this time it's the OL. But we're also going to make sure, just in case, if for some reason I end up using a UL tag in this same container, I want to apply the same margin settings, if you will. So if you remember right, if when we look back at our preview, I'm just going to tab over real quick, and if you looked at our preview before, our numbers are way over. We want to indent those, so we're going to adjust that by adjusting the margin from the left. And if we end up using any unordered list tags, I don't want to have to do that again or go in and retype that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take care of it in one style piece, basically. By after the OL tag, I'm going to type in a comma, and then I'm going to type in again the dot content secondary contain, so it's the same class, but instead of the OL it's going to be the UL. So what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to target two different tags at the same time and give them the same exact styling, so we're saving time and lines of code later on. So I'm going to open up a curly brace here, and what we're adjusting here is just the margin, and we're going to go ahead and adjust the top margin and give it our 15 pixel treatment on the top, which we'll tend to use a lot for a lot of our text elements in terms of the margin value on the top. And then 0 to the right, 0 to the bottom, but on the left I'm going to use a 3EM value. You can use about 20-ish, 25-ish pixels to take care of this as well if you'd like. I found that 3EM is about that same value though. So then hit the enter return key and then right curly brace. And then last but not least, we need to target the LI tag. So period, content, start typing that in, and then select content secondary contain from your code hint menu, and then the LI tag. And then open that up with the curly brace. And all we're going to adjust here is the padding between each one of these list items as it as it wraps. And then one other thing as well. So we're going to type in padding and select that, and then 0.15 em, so it's not very much, and then 0. What that's going to do is it's going to give the top and bottom of each one of those list items 0.15 em values worth of padding. And then I'm also going to go ahead and add a line height option here, just because when we have some of these when we have some of our goals here, if you have two lines in the same list item, sometimes they can seem close together, and that makes them harder to read. So with a line height, I'm going to do 1.5 em treatment there, as what we somewhat do, or what we do with our paragraph lines as well. And then that should take care of it for our styling. So I'm going to hit the enter return key and then right curly brace. And I'm going to save this, save my style sheet, and just in case, go up to File, Save All, so you've saved both files there. So then when we come over to our browser and want to see how things changed, so right now this was pre-style, and if I hit the refresh button, we should see a nice change there. So you see that that line there that gets that 1.5, in my first short-term goal, and that first goal there, you'll see that 1.5 em line height gives it a nice separation between if your goals kind of go into another section. All right, it's starting to shape up. We have one more section in our homepage to do, and I think you're going to like it. It's going to be somewhat complex and a pretty cool process, but I think it's going to add a nice piece to our homepage.